everybody. In this video we're going to have a look at using Blender to do some simple physics. So here I'm using Blender 2.8 and starting from the very beginning we have this cube, the default cube, and what I want to do is to make a domino out of this cube. So I'm going to press the S key to change the size of the cube, and I only want to change the size in the direction of the red line. So that red line is the x-axis. So after pressing S, I press X, and then I can move the mouse towards the center of the screen and the cube will get thinner. So I'll keep moving it until the cube is about that thick. Okay, if it's too thin, it will fall over too easily, and if it's too thick, then it won't fall over easily enough. Okay, now I want to squash it in the along the green line, so I press S again to change size, and the green line is the y-axis, so I press Y, and then move the mouse towards the center of the screen, and then when it's about that size, I'll click the mouse. Now here's a little bit of a tip for you. A mistake that some people make is that they start doing this when the mouse is already close to the center of the screen. So if the mouse is close to the center of the screen and then you press S, it's really difficult to control how much the size changes because you started very close to the center of the screen. So I'm going to press Escape, and then I'm going to move the mouse into the corner of the screen. Now you can't move it off the screen, because if you move the mouse over here, then your keyboard commands will do something different. So be careful of that. You've got to keep the mouse on the screen, but move it away from the center, and then press S, and then you have much better control over the size that you want it to change to. Okay, so that's just a tip for you. Okay, now once you've changed size and it looks something like this, you're ready to use this as a domino in your physics simulation. So to turn on the physics, we go over to the right hand side and you'll see there's this icon which looks a little bit like an atom, and we click on that icon and then you get a choice of different types of physics. Now the simplest type of physics, and the type that we're going to be using today, is called rigid body physics. So we click on rigid body and that has enabled the physics on this domino. Now you can see that physics is working by pressing the space bar. Again, make sure that your mouse is on the screen when you do this. Don't have the mouse over here, otherwise the space bar is going to do something different. So put the mouse on the screen, press the space bar, and your domino should drop off to infinity. Now, when you're ready to stop that, you press the escape key and it will go back to the beginning and your domino will appear back where it started. Now, if I press the space key again, sometimes people want to stop the animation at the current position, right? So as an example, I could stop the animation there where the domino's falling down. I can do that by just pressing the space key a second time. Now, if I do that, then the animation is actually stopped midway through playing, and you can see that down here. This tells you the animation time. So where it says 13, that means I'm like 13 frames into my animation. So I'm just going to click on that 13 and pull it back to 0 so that I rewind my animation to the start. Okay, so when you make changes, you want to make sure that your animation is on the start. If you're making changes and it's not behaving the way that you think it should, it might be because you're actually at a later point in the animation. So if you do that, just wind it back to 0. Now, as I mentioned before, the easiest way to make sure that it's always on 0 is to press escape to end your animation instead of space, and then it will go back to 0 automatically. Okay, so we've made this really simple animation where the domino just falls off into space. Now what we need to do is put a floor down so that the domino can land on something. So I'm going to go to the Add menu and then Mesh and choose Plane. Now that creates this plane, which is going to be like the table surface for us. Now I need to move either the plane down or the domino up. I think I'm going to move the domino up actually. So I'll click on the domino and press G to move it. Now, if I just press G, it could move in any direction, but I want to move it up and down. So I press Z to make sure that it's only moving on the Z axis. You can tell if you've done that right because you'll get that blue line showing where the Z-axis is. Now, once the domino is just above the table, I'm going to click. Okay, and now I'll click on the table and make it a bit bigger. Now, again, don't start too close to the center. Move your mouse away from the center, then press S and pull it out until it's about the size that you want. I think that's about the right size for my table. Now, if I press space to start the animation again, the domino will actually just fall through the table. Okay, that's because the table doesn't have any physics. So again, I go over to the physics tab, the bit that looks like an atom. Make sure you click on that. And then with the table selected, I click on rigid body. Now, some of you might be able to guess that this isn't the final step, because if I play the animation now, what actually happens is that the table as well as the domino will fall down. So I need to make sure that the table doesn't move, and I can do that by changing the type of the rigid body from active to passive. Now when I press space to start the animation, what happens is that domino just drops a tiny way and then lands on the table and settles down. So I'll press escape, and now I'm going to add a second domino. Now, I could go through changing the cube and resizing it and adding all of the physics properties again, but that would be a lot of hassle. A much easier way to do it is to select the domino that I've already made, hold down the Shift key and press D. That will make a copy of it. Now, if I press X, that will keep the dominoes lined up, and then I can move it along a little bit. And then when it's about the right distance away, I'll click and put my new domino down. Now I'll press Shift and D again, X to keep it lined up, and put my domino down. Okay, now if I press space, we can see that the dominoes fall and land on the table, but nothing else happens because the dominoes aren't actually falling over yet. So I'm going to click on my first domino, and then I'm going to press the R key to rotate it. Now I want to rotate it around the green axis. So at the moment, when I press the R key, it's actually kind of rotating in a weird way, which isn't very useful to me. So after pressing R, I press Y to make sure that it's rotating along the green axis, okay? That's going to keep the dominoes still lined up correctly. So I'm just going to tilt the domino so that this first domino is going to fall over when I start the animation. Let's just test it now. There we go. So the first domino falls over, and then obviously that will knock over the other dominoes. Okay, now once you've got your dominoes falling over, you might want to start adding some color. So first of all, I'm going to switch to color mode, and actually both of these will show color, but I'm going to click the very last bubble on the top right. And when you do that, we're going to switch to rendered mode, and you can see that we now have sort of light and some color, although everything's gray because we haven't actually added any colors to the dominoes. So I'll click on my first domino. I'm going to go over here to where there's a circle with a chessboard pattern on it and click on that. Now, depending on what you did before, it might look like this, and it might just have a blank box and say new. If it looks like that, just click on new. And then you'll go into this dialog, this display, and it says material 001. Now this is the material that the domino uses, and at the moment it's just a plain grey material, which is why the dominoes look grey. So I'm going to click on base color, and then I'm going to change this to green. Okay, so let's have a green domino there. Now if I click on this domino has a different material. So I'm going to click on this, and let's make it blue. Now these two dominoes are actually sharing the same material. Okay, so this domino has a different material because of what I did earlier on. These dominoes have the same material. If I wanted to change this domino's color, at the moment, if I change it, it's going to change the color of the other domino as well. But I can fix that if I just go up here and then click minus and then plus to create a new material, and then I can pick a different color for this domino as well. Okay, so now I've got three different colored dominoes. Maybe I'll give the floor a bit of a color as well. Let's pick a color for the floor. Don't want it to be, the brown color's okay, isn't it? That looks quite nice. Okay, and maybe I'll move the light over a little bit. Shall I move the light behind? Because I think that might look a bit more impressive. Okay, that looks cool. And now if I press space, and we can see the dominoes falling over. Okay. Now, if you've got this far, you're doing very well. So I'm going to show you a more advanced trick. What I'm going to do is press G and X to move these dominoes back towards the front of the table. Now I'm going to click on this blue domino, and then I'm going to go over here to the spanner, and this allows us to do all sorts of different things. Oh, you know, I just thought this trick isn't going to work, and I thought of a reason why this trick isn't going to work. Okay, so I won't show you that after all. But what you can do is just press D, Shift and D, sorry, and then X to keep them lined up. And if I Shift and D and X, and I can create quite a long run of dominoes. Now, as you get more advanced, you might try making the dominoes go around a corner. So we can rotate the dominoes by pressing R. And then again, don't forget, if you press R, your domino is just kind of rotating around the axis of your viewing angle, right? It depends on the way that you're looking at the domino. But if you want to rotate your domino, you probably want to rotate it around the Z axis. So I'm going to press Z, and then that will allow me to rotate the domino and still keep it flat on the table. So then I'll do Shift and D to move the domino again. And I'm going to press Shift and Z. That will stop the domino from moving up and down. Now I'll press R and Z to rotate the domino a little bit on top of the table. Then I'm going to press Shift and D to duplicate, and Shift and Z to make sure that the domino doesn't move up or down. Now I'll press R and Z to rotate it, and there we've gone around a corner. Okay, and let's just test that out. So I'll press space. Is it going to go around the corner? No, it didn't. No, it didn't. So I might want to, let's just look at it again and see what's happening with that domino. It does land on the other domino, but it doesn't have enough weight. So I think probably what I need to do is take those 4 dominoes and just move them a little bit further over here. Maybe that's enough to give that domino in the middle enough momentum. Yes, it is. There we go. Okay. So guys, I hope that gave you some good ideas about things that you can do with dominoes. There are all sorts of other ways that you can create interesting domino rallies, but I'm going to leave that to your imagination.